Migration's done, Foster. 400 old files the system could not read got cleared out. Friday, the paper goes to the shredder. Go answer the phone.
400 files. You mean 400 homes in Marden.
And your system just told me the county has no record that anybody owns a single one of them. The system is correct. Those are old handwritten deeds it could not read legacy noise. Legacy noise. Ada Pruitt is 78. Her grandfather bought her house with cash in 1922 because no bank in this town would lend a man like him a dime. She has lived in it her whole life, and you just told me she never owned it.
I told you there is no record, which in a courtroom is the same thing.
A house nobody can prove they own is not a home, Foster. It is an available lot.
The whole counter line went quiet.
So here's what happens. Thursday morning, the board votes to clear the batch. Those 400 parcels go to the county, and the redevelopment people finally get that whole tired stretch. Everybody moves on.
Thursday morning.
You are going to erase 400 families in one vote. And the only proof they ever existed, you are going to shred first. There is no proof, Foster. That is the entire point.
But there was proof. One copy of it left in all the world. And the only person who knew that was the man at the counter. Nobody in that building had ever once thought worth watching. Andre picked up an old deed off his desk and held it a moment. A whole family's life in one soft page.
A deed is just the county remembering that a family was here. Lose the record, and the law says they never were.
What none of them had ever bothered to learn was the shape of the man they had parked at that counter. The one who answered the phone and stamped the filings understood the bones of that archive better than any system Merritt had ever bought. He knew the grantor and grantee indexes the way other men know a language they grew up in. He knew which plat maps lied and which ones held. And nobody knew that for years, on his own time, with his own scanner, Andre Foster had been quietly copying every page of the old deed books that the county kept threatening to throw away, because he had learned a long time ago exactly how much the county could be trusted to remember a neighborhood like Marden. He had learned it the hard way. That was a story he did not tell. "You do not have the authority to interpret the batch, Foster," Merritt said, already turning back to his tablet, the matter closed in his mind. "You process the counter line, leave the parcels to people who can read a data field." Andre did not argue with a closed door. He had figured out years back that arguing with Warren Merritt was like filing a complaint with the weather. But when Merritt was gone, Lorraine Beck came over to his counter, quiet. 400, she said. "You are sure?" "I ran it 3 times. Every address on the East Platte. No record found." He kept his voice low. "Lorraine, those are the oldest deeds in the county, hand-recorded. Some of them, before the courthouse, owned a typewriter. When the new system could not read them, it did not flag them for a person to check. It dropped them and moved on and called the books clean. And nobody caught it. Nobody was looking at Marden. Nobody is ever looking at Marden. That is the entire reason it is Marden." That afternoon, Ada Pruitt came to the counter herself with a shoebox. She was 78 years old, and she set the shoebox down like it weighed something. And she took the lid off. And inside were tax receipts going back decades, rubber-banded by year, and on top of them, a single deed, so old the fold lines had gone soft as cloth. "They sent me a letter," Ada said. "It says the county has no record I own my house. I have lived in that house since I was 8 years old. My grandfather bought it in 1922. She put a finger on the soft old page. "This is his deed. It has the county stamp on it, recorded. So I do not understand the letter, and the young man on the phone could not explain it to me, so I came down here to a person." Andre came around the counter. He did not stay behind it, the way the counter teaches you to. He sat down next to Ada Pruitt in one of the plastic chairs by the window, and he took the old deed the way you take something that matters, by the edges. "May I?" he said, and she nodded, and he read it, and it was clean. Grantor, grantee, legal description. The recording stamp, a book and page number that would point straight to the original in a deed book downstairs. It was, in every way the law had ever cared about, proof. "Mrs. Pruitt, this is a good deed," he said. This is a better deed than half the people in the new subdivisions have. Whatever that letter says, you own your house. I can see it in my hand. Then why does the county say I do not? And that was the whole of it, sitting in a plastic chair in the afternoon light. And Andre Foster did not have an answer he was allowed to give her. He had one he was not allowed to give her. Merritt passed behind the counter on his way out and glanced at the soft old page in Andre's hands the way you glance at a museum piece. Legacy instrument, he said, naming it like a species. Mrs. Pruitt, the county will set up a process for the unestablished parcels. You will be able to file a claim. A claim, Ada said, on my own house. On the parcel. It is procedural. Young man, my grandfather filed the claim in 1922. It is in your book. Ada did not raise her voice. She had been not raising her voice to official men her whole life. I did not come down here to file a claim. I came down here because somebody mailed me a letter that says I am not real. Merritt was already walking. He did not hear the last part, or he heard it, and it did not fit in a data field, which, for a man like Merritt, came to the same thing. By closing time, the counter line was out the door, and it was all Martin. A man with a folder of mortgage payoff letters. A woman holding her mother's funeral program in one hand and a deed in the other. A young couple who had closed on their first house 60 days ago and been told that morning it was not theirs. Sir, I have the closing documents right here. I signed them in this building. I paid this house off in 2001. I have the letter. They said I have to prove I live in my own home. How do you even prove that? I sleep there. Andre worked the line until the doors closed, and he could not give a single one of them the truth, which was that the proof they were begging for was sitting on a drive in his desk drawer 6 feet away, and that he was afraid to use it. He handed out claim forms he knew were worthless, and a promise he did not know how to keep. And he locked the counter, and he felt the whole weight of 400 families come down onto the one thing he had sworn he would never risk again. He went home that night to a small apartment and a 13-year-old named Kiara, who was doing homework at the kitchen table. And he made dinner, and he did not say much. And Kiara, who was 13 and missed nothing, watched him not say much. Something's wrong at work, she said. Something's always wrong at work. No, this is the other face, the one you had when Grandma's insurance stuff was happening. She put her pencil down. What is it? Andre stood at the stove with his back to her and thought about how much to say to a 13-year-old, which is a calculation single parents run 100 times a day, and he gave her the shape of it without the weight. The county lost some records, he said. Some houses, 400 of them, in Martin, where Grandma's house is. Kiara went still. Grandma's house? Her name is not in the new system. None of their names are. He turned off the burner. There is a hearing Thursday. If it goes the way the man in charge wants it to, the county gets to say all 400 of those families never really owned anything, and then it can take the land. A deed is just the county remembering that a family was here, lose the record, and the law says they never were. That is what happened to 400 people today. On paper, they were never home. Can they do that? On paper, yes. Paper is the only place any of it is real. He set 2 plates down. Eat. But you can fix it. You always know the record stuff. You are the one who found Grandma's account that time when nobody else could. Kiara said it like it was obvious, like her father fixing a records problem was as natural as her father making dinner. You can fix it, right? And there it was. The thing Andre Foster had been not thinking about all the way home, laid out on the kitchen table by his own kid, because he could fix it. He was maybe the only person alive who could fix it. He had the backup. Every page of every one of those old Martin deed books, scanned and dated and sitting on a drive in a drawer 6 feet from where his daughter was eating dinner. He could walk into that hearing Thursday and put 400 families' proof on the table, and doing it would end him. It is complicated, Andre said. It is not complicated. You have the thing. I can tell by your face you have the thing. Kiara had stopped eating. You always have the thing. Kiara, listen to me for a second, because you are old enough now. He sat down across from her. "The way I would have to fix it. The records I would have to show. I made those copies myself, on my own, without permission. That is against every rule they have. A man is not supposed to take the county's records home, not even to protect them. If I stand up in that room Thursday and show what I have, I am telling them I broke that rule for years." "So what? So they fire me?" He said it plainly because she was old enough. "And when they fire me, we lose the insurance. Your asthma, your inhalers, the specialist, all of it comes off my badge and it goes away the day they walk me out. That is what fixing it costs. Not for them, for us, for you." He rubbed his face. "I have spent 13 years making sure the floor never dropped out from under you. And the way to save Mrs. Pruitt's house is to reach down and pull the floor out myself." Kiara worked it the way she worked everything, all the way to the bottom. "Grandma's house is one of the 400. Yes. So if you do not fix it, they take Grandma's house. And if you do fix it, we might lose the apartment because you lose the job." Her jaw was tight. "So either way, we lose something of ours. It is just whether it is Grandma's house or my medicine." "That is about the size of it," Andre said, and hated that it was. "That is not fair." "No, it is not. Then how are you even supposed to pick?" "I do not know yet," he said. "That is why my face looks like this." Kiara looked at him a long time, 13 years old, and did not have an answer either. And that was fair, because it was not a fair thing to put in front of a kid. That was the night Andre Foster almost let it go. He told himself the reasonable things, and the reasonable things are always the worst ones. That it was not his fight, that he was one clerk, that someone with a lawyer and standing would surely come forward, that a man with a daughter to raise does not set himself on fire for a fight the county has already decided to win. He had learned all of this once before, the expensive way, and he had built a quiet life on top of what it taught him, and the quiet life had a name, and the name was Kiara, and you do not risk the thing with a name for 400 things without one. He almost let it go. He even started the email to the county's legal office. "Careful and deniable, I have noticed a possible discrepancy in the Marden parcels the board may wish to review." The kind of note a man sends so he can say later that he said something, while making sure it changes nothing and costs him nothing. He got 3 lines in. Then he thought about Ada Pruitt saying somebody mailed me a letter that says I am not real, and he pictured his careful, deniable note sitting unopened in an inbox until Marden was already gone, and he closed the email without sending it. He did not feel brave for closing it. He felt like a coward who had simply run out of comfortable ways to stay one. He would not have gone through with letting it go if it had stayed that simple. But the next morning, it stopped being simple, because the next morning, he learned 2 things that turned the whole shape of it over. The first he learned from Lorraine Beck, who found him at the coffee machine before the office opened and spoke low and fast. "The Marden books," she said. "The originals, the physical deed books. What about them? Merritt moved the destruction up. They do not get pulped Friday. They go on a truck tonight, out of the county, to a contractor." "Tonight," Andre set his coffee down. "The night before the hearing. The night before the hearing. Think about what that means." Lorraine held his eyes. "A copy of a deed is not a deed, but a copy standing next to the original book it came from, with the index behind it, that is a thing no judge on earth can wave away. He is destroying the originals a full day early, on purpose. After tonight, all anybody has is a computer that says no record found, and no way to prove the computer is lying. You are telling me the backup is not enough. I am telling you the backup is a photograph of a ghost, unless you can stand it next to the body. And the body leaves on a truck tonight." That was the first thing. It made the whole problem harder, because it meant having the copies was not winning. It was barely the beginning, and it put a clock on the night that had not been there before. The second thing he learned an hour later, and it was worse, and it came from the redevelopment paperwork sitting in the shared drive that nobody had thought a counter clerk would ever open. The 400 unmatched parcels were not a loose end. They were a line item. Every one of them was already mapped into a redevelopment district, already tied to a tax auction schedule that could not proceed while the parcels had clear title, and could proceed the moment the board declared them unestablished. The glitch was not an accident somebody was too lazy to fix. The glitch was a door, and there were people standing at it with their hands out, waiting for Thursday's vote to open it. He walked to Lorraine's desk and turned her screen toward her. Look at the district map, then look at the unmatched batch. Then tell me they are not the same 400 parcels. Lorraine looked. She put on her glasses and looked again, the way you look at a thing you do not want to be true. They are the same 400 parcels, she said. The system did not lose Marden by accident, Lorraine. Somebody drew a redevelopment line around Marden, and then Marden went dark in the migration. And Thursday, the board makes the dark permanent. That is not a bug. That is the whole plan, wearing a bug for a costume. You cannot prove intent. I do not have to prove intent, Andre said. I just have to prove the families. Intent is the county attorney's problem. The families are mine. Andre sat at his terminal and understood, all at once, that the system had not failed. The system had done exactly what it was built to do, which was find a millionaire's lien in a heartbeat and lose a working family's house in an afternoon and call it a glitch every single time. And the only reason he could see it was that he was standing at the one desk nobody important had ever bothered to watch. He thought about Ada Pruitt's grandfather buying a house in 1922 in a neighborhood the maps of that era had colored red, so no bank would lend there. So the families had bought with cash and sweat and held the paper themselves for 100 years, because the county's promise to remember them had never once been worth trusting. He thought about his mother, who had done the same, whose house on Delroy Street had a soft old deed, just like Ada's, whose name the new system now said had never been there at all. His mother had passed the previous spring. Andre had cleaned out that house himself. The first thing he had ever scanned, years before, was the letter that proved she had paid the house off. The week a county typo said she still owed on it, and a younger Andre Foster went home shaking and bought a scanner. The second thing he scanned was the deed itself. He had not stopped since. He found Lorraine at her desk. If we stop the truck tonight, he said, and I bring what I have, and we put the copies next to the originals, and I build the chain of title for all 400 house by house before 9 Thursday morning, is that a thing two people can do in one night? Lorraine looked at him, and 30 years of being told to keep her head down went somewhere behind her eyes and did not come back. No, she said. It is not a thing two people can do in one night. She stood up and took her keys off the hook. But it is a thing we are going to do anyway. I know where they stage the truck, and I have wanted to be on the right side of one of these before I retire for about 20 years. Get your drive. The loading dock behind the Hall of Records at 8 that night was where a life quietly turns, and it turned over a hand truck stacked with deed books bound in cracked leather, wheeled by a contractor who did not care what was in them. Those do not go tonight, Lorraine said, stepping into the light with the flat certainty of a woman who had badged into that building longer than the contractor had been alive. I got a work order, says they do, and I am the records custodian of this county, and I am telling you they are evidence in a matter before the board Thursday morning. And if you shred evidence the night before a hearing, that is not my problem, son. That is your problem, and it is a felony-sized problem. She held out her hand. The work order. Let me see whose name is on it. The contractor looked at the name on the work order, which was Merritt's, and looked at the old woman who was not blinking, and did the math that men doing a night job for a flat fee always do, which is that no amount of money is worth a felony, and he put the hand truck down. You want to fight over some old books, the contractor said, wiping his hands. That is between you and whoever signs my check. Whoever signs your check is about to have a very bad month. Andre took the top book off the stack and opened it to the docklight, deed after deed in a careful 100-year-old hand. You are looking at 400 families' proof that they own their homes. Somebody paid you a flat fee to turn it into confetti the night before it would have mattered. He closed the book, gentle, the way you close something old. Go home. Tell them the custodian pulled the load. That part is even true. The contractor went home. They took the books back inside, and then Andre Foster sat down in the basement of the Calder County Recorder's office with a drive full of everything the county wanted to forget, and 400 families' worth of original deed books rescued off a truck, and a veteran archivist who knew where every index lived. And he did the thing he was actually born to do. He built the record back, house by house. He would pull a Marden address, find it dark in the new system, no record found, and then he would open his own scan of the original deed, read the book and page number off the recording stamp, pull that exact leather book off the cart, turn to that exact page, and there it would be, the real instrument, grantor to grantee, stamped and dated by a county clerk who had done his job right 80 years ago. Then the index, tracing the chain forward, sale to sale, inheritance to inheritance, down to the family sleeping in that house tonight, who did not know a stranger in a basement was the only thing standing between them and the word trespasser. Most of it, though, he had already built, and that was the thing he had never let himself look at, straight until tonight. Years of scanning, years of quietly tracing one chain, and then the next, when the counter went slow, saving what the county wanted to forget. He had a folder that was, he understood now, 400 families' legal defense, assembled one patient page at a time by a man who had told himself he was only tidying up. He had been building this defense for years without admitting to himself that it was one. Tonight was not building. Tonight was standing it next to the originals, so no one could call it a photograph of a ghost. "How long?" Lorraine said, around midnight, sliding another leather book across the table to him. "How long have you been copying these?" "Since the county nearly lost my mother's house." He did not look up from the page. Years ago, a clerk fat-fingered a mortgage satisfaction, and for about a week the system said she still owed on a house she had paid off in 1990. A grown woman who worked 2 jobs for 30 years to own that house free and clear, and a typo almost took it, and nobody in this building thought that was an emergency. "So you started saving them. I bought a scanner that weekend, and you never told a soul you had them." "Who was I going to tell, Lorraine?" He turned a page. "I told them once. 15 years ago, I stood up in a room on the 3rd floor and said, if we digitize without protecting the irregular deeds, we will lose the old neighborhoods first, because their paper is the least tidy and the least defended. Marden first of all. And they wrote difficult on your review. They moved me to the counter. My warning went in a drawer, and I went in the drawer with it." Lorraine was quiet a moment. "I was in that room," she said. 15 years ago. I heard you say it, and I did not stand up with you." "No," Andre said, not unkind. "Nobody did. That is how they teach the rest of us the lesson." He reached for the next book. "You are standing up now. That counts for more than you think. Pull me the 1890 index. I need the Marden plat before I can close out this block." "Delroy Street," he said, and built his mother's, grandmother to mother, to the empty house he had cleaned out in the spring, and had to stop for a minute, and Lorraine pretended to look for something in a drawer so he could have the minute, and then he kept going. A little before 3, Lorraine read out an address and stopped. "This one is a church, Greater Zion. On that corner since 1931, and the system says the lot belongs to no one. Then we give them their corner back too," Andre said, and pulled the book and did. His phone lit up on the table. Kiara did not sleep when her father did not come home. 3:12 in the morning. "Kiara, did you pick yet?" Andre looked at 400 families spread across a basement table. Andre, "Yes." "Kiara, good. I already knew which one you'd pick." He set the phone down and did not answer that, because there was nothing you could add to it, and he got back to work. And then, past 3, he hit the one chain that would not close. "Ada Pruitt," he said, and traced it back, grandfather to father to her, clean and undeniable, until 1953, where it simply stopped. The index book for that stretch had a scorch burned across the corner, some basement fire nobody had ever bothered to write up, and the page carrying the transfer of the house to Ada was gone. Ash. "That is the one I cannot prove." Andre sat back and the irony of it came down on his chest like a weight. Of all 400, the house that started this. Her grandfather is in the book, her father is in the book, and the year it passed to Ada, the book is burned. Then that is the one Merritt uses, Lorraine said. Find the weakest chain and swing it at the other 399. Andre stared at the burned corner a long moment. And then he remembered the shoebox. He called Ada Pruitt at 4 in the morning. She did not ask why. She put on her Sunday coat and brought the box down herself and set it on the table between them, the tax receipts rubber-banded by year going back decades. My grandmother kept every single one, Ada said. She used to say the county forgets on purpose, so you keep the paper yourself. I never understood why she was so fierce about it. She looked at the burned book. I think I do now. And there it was. 1953, 1954. Every year after, a tax receipt in Ada's name for that house. Paid, stamped, unbroken. The county's own burned book could not say the house had passed to her. But the county's own tax office had taken her money for it, every year for 70 years, which is the thing the law calls, when it finally bothers to look, continuous possession, and which no fire can burn away. You just closed your own chain, Mrs. Pruitt, Andre said quietly. The one house in 400 I could not save, and you saved it. With a shoebox your grandmother would not let anybody throw out. Ada looked at the exhausted man across the table. And what does it cost you to stand up in there? She had lived 78 years and knew nothing came free from a county. You have got that look. My husband had it the day before he did the right expensive thing. It cost me my job, most likely. Maybe my daughter's insurance for a while. Ada was quiet. Then she surprised him. Then do not do it, she said. Not for a house. A house is boards. You have a child. Mrs. Pruitt, I mean it. I have buried enough people who set themselves on fire for the right thing. Do not you dare do it for me. I am not doing it only for you. Andre set the lid back on her shoebox, gentle. My daughter asked me last night how a person picks between the right thing and the safe thing, and I did not have an answer for her. And I decided the answer I want her growing up knowing is that her father did not just have the proof. He used it. By dawn, they had 400 chains of title, 400 families the county had erased and could no longer erase. And Andre Foster had not slept, and he knew exactly what walking into that room was going to cost him, and he was going to walk into it anyway. The Board of Supervisors met at 9 on Thursday morning. Merritt presented first, smooth, a slide deck, the modernization a triumph. Every county in the state is watching Calder, he told the board. We are the first to fully retire paper. The unmatched batch is a fraction of 1%, legacy parcels with no verifiable title, and clearing them is the final step to a record that is clean, searchable, and defensible in any court in the country. I am asking you to ratify the migration and resolve the batch, so this office can stop living in its own basement. He asked the board to declare the 400 parcels unestablished. It was going to pass. You could feel it going to pass. 5 supervisors who wanted the clean books and the redevelopment money and had no reason on earth to slow down for 400 houses in Marden. Any discussion before we vote, said the chair, a tired woman named Dorsey with a long agenda and no reason to think this was the item that would matter. Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion to ratify the migration and to declare the unmatched parcels. Ma'am, before you finish that sentence, a records clerk nobody had introduced stood up in the public seats with a cardboard box, and next to him an old woman in her Sunday coat, and behind them a records veteran with a cart of leather books, and the clerk asked to be heard. This is not on the agenda, Merritt said. 400 families losing their homes is not on the agenda, Andre said. That is the whole problem. Give me 5 minutes and then vote whatever you want. Dorsey looked at the clock and looked at the old woman in the Sunday coat and did the small human thing that turned some rooms and not others. You have 5 minutes. My name is Andre Foster. I process filings at the counter downstairs. He set the box on the table. Mr. Merritt is going to tell you these 400 families cannot prove they own their homes. I am here to prove it for them. All 400 this morning before you vote. He did not rush it. He laid it out the way he had laid out Ada's deed on a plastic chair, plainly so a person could follow it. The new system says no record found for these parcels. That is true. But no record found does not mean no one owns them. It means the system could not read the old deeds. Here is one it could not read. He opened a leather book to a marked page and turned it toward the board. Ada Pruitt's grandfather, recorded 1922, book and page right there in the county's own hand. And here, he set a printout beside it. The chain of title from that deed to the woman sitting next to me, every transfer unbroken, for 100 years. The record was never gone. It was just somewhere this office decided to stop looking. Mr. Foster, one of the supervisors, a careful man named Pell, leaned in. You are telling this board your office lost 400 records, all at once, in one neighborhood. The new system dropped 400 records, all at once, in the one neighborhood in this county where the deeds are oldest and least regular. Yes, sir. And you can prove ownership on all 400, not just the one book in your hand. All 400. I built the chain on every one of them last night. Andre set a thick stack of printouts on the table. Pick one, any address in Martin. Read it out, and I will walk you from the man who first bought that lot to the family asleep in it this morning. Pell picked one, read the address off the top of the stack, half to test him. Andre walked it, owner to owner, deed to deed, 90 years and 4 minutes, without notes. The room listened to a man do out loud the exact thing a very expensive system had failed to do, and the temperature of the board began, quietly, to change. Mr. Foster, said a supervisor who had not spoken yet, a woman near the end of the dais. If it is all this clear, why are we hearing it from you? Why did no one in that office simply fix it? Because fixing it means admitting the new system failed on the exact neighborhood everyone finds easiest to fail, and because the one person who could fix it is me, and I was told 15 years ago that it was not my job. He held her eyes. You are asking why a clerk had to stand up in the back of the room to stop this. With respect, ma'am, that is not my question to answer. That one belongs to this table. All I can do is put the proof in front of you. What the county does with proof it would rather not have seen, that has always been up to you, not to me. Merritt was already on his feet. Mr. Chairman, this man is a counter clerk with no standing, and I would point out that whatever those printouts are, this office has no scanning program that produces them. Those are unauthorized copies. However he obtained county records off-site, it was against policy, and nothing gathered in violation of policy should be admitted into this decision. And there it was, the knife, exactly where Andre had known it would be. Merritt was not going to argue the deeds were fake. He could not. So he was going to argue that the man who saved them was a thief and get 400 families thrown out on the character of the one person who came to defend them. Is that true? Dorsey said, to Andre, not to Merritt. Are these copies you were not authorized to make? The room waited on him. This was the moment. This was the floor, and Andre's own hand on it, and Kiara's face, and the badge, and the insurance, and the quiet life. All of it right there. One honest sentence away from gone. Andre Foster took a breath and pulled the floor out himself. He is right, Andre said. I made those copies. On my own time, with my own scanner, without anyone's permission, for years. It is against policy. You can fire me for it, and after today you probably will. He put his hand flat on the old leather book. I did it because 15 years ago I sat in a meeting in this building and I told this county that if it ever digitized these records without protecting the irregular ones, it would lose exactly these neighborhoods, and I was told I was difficult, and I was moved to the counter, and the warning went in a drawer. His voice did not rise. It got very clear. So I started saving them myself, one book at a time, because I did not trust this office to remember Martin, and I want the record to show that I was right not to, because here we are. And the only reason 400 families still own their homes this morning is that a clerk you sent to answer the phones did not throw away the county's memory when the county told him to. The room was very quiet. "You can decide what to do with me," Andre said. "That is a different meeting, but you cannot decide these families never existed, because the proof is on this table, in your own county's ink, and now it is in the minutes, and it does not go away just because the man who brought it is inconvenient. A deed is just the county remembering that a family was here. You were 10 seconds from erasing the record and letting the law say 400 families never were. Do not." He looked at the 5 supervisors, one at a time. "The county can find a millionaire's lien in a heartbeat, but the deed to a working family's house goes missing in an afternoon, and every time somebody stands up where Mr. Merritt is standing and calls it a glitch. It was not a glitch. It was a choice. You are about to make it again or not, and this time it is on the record either way." Ada Pruitt stood up next to him in her Sunday coat and did not make a speech because she did not need to. "You mailed me a letter," she told the board, "that says the county has no record I own my house, so I brought you the record." She set her grandfather's deed on the table beside Andre's box, the soft old page, the county's own stamp. "My grandfather bought that house in 1922, when no bank in this town would lend a man like him a dime. So he saved, and he paid cash, and he kept the paper himself. Because even then, folks like us had learned that the county's memory had a way of losing us." She looked down the dais, one supervisor at a time. "I have lived in that house 70 years. That young man there is the first person from this county who ever came around the counter and sat down next to me. I do not understand your systems. I know he read my grandfather's deed like it was worth reading, which it is. A beat. Which we are." Lorraine Beck stood up next, without being asked, the way a person stands when 30 years of keeping quiet has finally run out. "I am the records custodian for this county, 3 decades. She set a single sheet on the table. "These original deed books were scheduled to be shredded last night, out of county, where no one could ever check them again, the night before this hearing." She tapped the page. "That is the work order to destroy them. I stopped the truck myself, on this floor, at 8 last night. You are welcome to read whose signature is on the order." Dorsey read it. It was Warren Merritt's. "Why would a man destroy the originals the night before a hearing about whether the originals exist?" Pell said. "To no one, which is the kind of question that answers itself, and you could watch 5 supervisors do the arithmetic of a scandal in real time." Merritt tried once more, because men like Merritt always try once more. "Madam Chair, this is theater, a disgruntled clerk and a box of photographs." He set his tablet down, and for the first time all morning, he was not smug. He was certain, which is worse. And let me say the part nobody in this room wants to hear. Paper dies. Every year a little more of it rots, or floods, or burns. 2 counties over, a broken pipe erased 60 years of records because they would not modernize. He let that sit. "You are about to applaud a man who kept the county's memory in a basement, one flood away from gone. I am the one making sure it still exists in 50 years. So ask yourselves an honest question before you make me the villain. Do you want to protect Martin with rotting paper and an old woman's shoebox? Or with a system that lasts?" It landed. You could feel it land. Half the board had walked in ready to dislike him, and now sat unsure, because he was not entirely wrong, and a man who is not entirely wrong is the hardest kind there is to beat. Andre stood back up. "He is right that paper dies," Andre said. "He is right that this county needs a real system. I have wanted one for 15 years. He put his hand flat on the burned index book. "So hear me. Digitizing is not the enemy in this room. The enemy is digitizing and then refusing to read the hard pages." The room was quiet. Mr. Merritt did not save Martin from a flood. He bought a machine that could not read a handwritten name. And when it could not read 400 of them, he did not slow down and read them himself. He called them noise, and he put them on a truck to be shredded. Andre looked straight at him. "You did not kill paper, Mr. Merritt. You killed the names that took an extra minute to read. That is not modernization. That is the oldest thing in this country, wearing a new system for a coat. Mr. Merritt, it was Pell, you keep telling me his copies are the problem. You have not once told me the deeds are fake. Are the deeds fake? A pause that lasted slightly too long. The deeds are, in most cases, presumably authentic legacy instruments, but the process by which they were copied, presumably authentic. Pell wrote something down. So, the records are real, the families are real, and the only thing anybody has actually questioned in this last hour is why your office put the originals on a truck to be shredded at 8 o'clock last night. He set his pen down. I have been on this board 11 years, Warren. I voted for every line item you ever put in front of me, and I am sitting here understanding that I would have voted for this one too, without reading it, if a man who answers the phone downstairs had not stood up in the cheap seats and made me. Dorsey looked down the dais. Is anyone prepared to vote to void 400 titles this morning? Raise your hand. Not one hand went up. Is anyone here eager to be the supervisor, whose name ends up in the paper next to the number 400 and the word Martin? Nobody was eager for that either, but one of them had a practical problem and said it. Halting that auction cost this county $8 million, Mr. Foster. It was a supervisor named Coyne, quiet until now, a man who looked like he read budgets in his sleep. Real money, roads, a clinic, it is already spent on paper. Does your shoebox pay for that? No, sir, it does not. Andre did not flinch. $8 million is what the auction brings in. It is not what it costs. What it costs is 400 families, and you cannot put that number on a budget line, so this county has spent 100 years pretending it is free. He looked at Ada and back at Coyne. It was never free. Somebody was just always made to pay it quietly, in a neighborhood nobody at this dais lives in. You can still take the $8 million. You will just have to say out loud, in the minutes, whose homes you took it out of. Coyne looked at his hands for a long moment. He was not a bad man. He was a man who read budgets. But there are sentences that make a budget impossible to read the same way ever again, and Andre had just said one straight to him. The motion to declare the parcels unestablished did not pass. What passed instead was an order to restore the 400 Martin titles from the original instruments, to halt the redevelopment auction pending an investigation into how the parcels had been mapped into it before the hearing, and to refer the destruction order to the county attorney. It passed 5 votes to none. Coyne's was the last hand up, and it went up slow, but it went up. Warren Merritt gathered his tablet and walked out of the room, and not one person turned to watch him go. The man who worshipped the clean data field left it exactly the way one of his own searches disposed of a name it had decided did not exist. No record found. Lorraine Beck sat down next to Andre in the emptying room, 30 years of keeping her head down finally spent, and let out a breath she seemed to have been holding since a meeting on the 3rd floor 15 years before. We should have done that a long time ago, she said. We did it today, Andre said. Today is the one we get. There would be an investigation, and it would find a redevelopment district drawn around 400 homes that were only available if their titles vanished. And it would find that the titles had vanished with suspicious convenience, and it would end careers, and slowly, the way these things move, it would give 400 families back the thing that had been theirs all along. That was the structural part, and it would grind forward now without Andre Foster having to carry it, because it was finally in the light where other people could pick it up. What mattered happened at the back of the room. Ada Pruitt took his hand in both of hers and did not let go for a while. The families of Martin, the ones who had heard and come, stood as he passed, not because anyone told them to, but because a room of working people knows exactly what it costs a man to pull his own floor out, and they had just watched him do it for them. An old man Andre had never met put a hand on his shoulder. Delroy Street, he said. 2 doors down from your mother. I knew her 40 years. And that was a whole conversation, and Andre shook his hand and could not say much back. A younger woman gripped his sleeve. My kids are going to grow up in the house I grew up in, she said, and could not finish it, and did not have to. And Kiara was there. She had walked out of school at the morning break and taken the bus downtown, because Some things a 13-year-old decides she is going to be in the room for, whatever the attendance office thinks, and she had slipped into the back in time to hear the part where her father told a room full of officials that they could fire him, and she had understood every word of what that meant for the inhalers and the specialist and the floor she stood on. And she was looking at him now with something on her face he had never quite seen there before, which was not worry and was not fear, but was the particular way a child looks at a parent the moment she stops seeing a person who keeps her safe and starts seeing a person who is good. "You pulled the floor out," she said. "I did. We are going to be okay, though, even if they fire you." "Right. I do not know," Andre said, because there was an old promise between them that he would never lie to her about anything that counted. "I honestly do not know how we land, but I know we are going to be okay in the way that matters, because I am going to be a man you can look at, and that turns out to be the floor I actually could not pull out from under you, no matter what." Kiara thought about that the way she thought about everything, all the way to the bottom. "I already looked at you like that," she said. "You just did not know it. You thought the floor was the apartment." She took his hand. 13 years old, in a room full of people who now knew the name of the man from the counter. "The floor was always you." They did not fire him. In the end, though that took months, and a union and a county that suddenly did not want the story of the clerk it tried to punish for saving Martin. He kept the badge, he kept the insurance, but he did not find out about any of that for a long time, and it was not the point, and he knew it was not the point even standing in the room not knowing. Before he left the Hall of Records that day, Andre Foster took one thing out of the cardboard box, the thing that had been on top, that he had carried in separately, wrapped in a cloth. A single deed, the fold lines soft as cloth. A woman's name written on it in a careful clerk's hand, stamped recorded in the year his mother bought a house on Delroy Street that the county had tried twice to forget and failed both times. He did not put it back in the county's books. That copy of it was safe now, restored, in the record where it belonged, remembered. This one he was taking home. He held it a moment in the gray light of the lobby, his mother's name, proof that she had been here, that a family had been here, that the paper had held because one person refused to let it be thrown away. On his way out, he stopped at his own counter, the low chair, the phone, the stamp. 15 quiet years of being the man nobody looked at. Kiara watched him look at it. "You gonna come back to this?" she asked. "Maybe somebody has to sit here." He squared the old grantor index on the desk, the way you leave a thing ready for the next person. And it turns out the one who sits at the counter is the one who remembers. So maybe it was never the small chair I spent 15 years thinking it was. Then he put the deed in his coat, over his heart, and took his daughter's hand, and walked out past the counter where he had spent so many quiet years being nobody, into an afternoon where, for the first time in 15 years, he was not.